I know we've only known each other for 4 weeks and 3 days, but to me, it seems like 9 weeks and 5 days.
All right, all right, all right. Welcome, welcome, all you garden enthusiasts and passionate plant people to Let's Get Growing right here on the Urban Gardener channel. It's our Sunday edition, and welcome everybody here. We've got a great show for you today. It is the second Sunday of the month, so that means that we've got our good friend Scott Wilson from the Gardener Scott channel. Scott Wilson's a great master gardener, full of great garden knowledge. He's here to answer all of our gardening questions today. So we're really fortunate to have Scott show up here on our show each and every month to answer all of our questions, to help us out throughout the gardening season, to make sure that our gardens are growing the best they can. And he's sure to have some great answers to all of our questions today. So looking forward to seeing Scott here a little bit later on in the show for sure. And then let's see here real quick. I want to. All right. Yep. Definitely. All right. So yeah, and definitely at the top of the show, if you are here with us, click the like button as well as subscribe, share, get into the comments, jump into the chat. Again, too, if you have any questions, comments, or anything, definitely get them into the chat there. And while Scott's here, so we can get your questions answered. And I hope you have lots of pending gardening questions today for us to get into today while Scott's here with us on the show. And then as well too, a big huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on the replay. Thank you so much for joining with us when you got time. I know we got a live show. Everything's fun when you get a chance. Come and check us out when we're live and join the conversation. But we're definitely glad to have you on the replay. So definitely jump into the comment section below. Let me know you're here. Let me know what you got growing on in your gardens. Let me know if you got any suggestions or anything like that. I love to hear from people about possible guests. Who would you like to see on the show? We have had just a ton of amazing guests this year, and really right here kind of in the middle of the season as we're really getting started growing here in our gardens, and as well here on the Let's Get Growing show. We also had probably one of our biggest and best shows yesterday on the Saturday show. So I hope all of you, if you haven't had a chance to check that out, if you're joining with us here on Sunday on the Sunday show but you haven't seen our Saturday show, yesterday's show, we had a very special guest with us yesterday, Mark Valencia from Self Sufficient Me, joined with us live from Australia, and we just had a really wonderful conversation. Mark, anybody in the gardening world knows Mark is one of the biggest gardeners out there on YouTube, doing all sorts of wonderful stuff, and has been inspiring gardeners for many years. I've been watching him, I think now, when I was talking to him yesterday, I think somewhere around 12 years now that I've been following with Mark. And just unbelievable, to see where he came from and where he is today. And we just talked all about all sorts of that stuff yesterday on yesterday's show. It was really fun. I really encourage you to go check that out as well. We also got to meet Sean and Allison McManus from Spoken Garden yesterday as well too. They've got a really great little channel podcast. They're also authors of a really cool like beginner gardener's book, and also invented this really cool little dibbler seed starter type of tool for the garden. Really kind of a cool creative invention for the garden. We talked all about that sort of stuff and their garden story and all of that as well too. So a really great show yesterday. So I really encourage all of you to go and check that out if you haven't had a chance to yet. Definitely. And real quick forward promotion to next Saturday's show. We are featuring Leo Carver. He's author of Growing Consciousness And I'm really excited about talking with him about, just kind of that really spiritual kind of, mental healing side of the garden. This is just really, I think, one of those real special things about the garden and garden experience for so many gardeners. We've talked to tons of gardeners here on the show, and really that is just one of those common things you hear from people, is that when that experience in the garden, when they come out of the garden and feel the way they do, just about who they are, where they are, the world, everything around you just feel better. And as I mentioned to even Mark yesterday, was like, even though your knees might be aching a little bit, your heart feels a lot better when you get out there and you get to connect with nature, get your hands in the soil, grow some stuff, especially food, if you can. And just that real spiritual side of the garden is amazing for so many people. And I can't wait to talk to Leo about that. That's going to be really awesome, because it's a big part of my experience. And really, ultimately, I think it's one of those things that just really kind of seals the deal. It's why you've got so many people out there in the gardening community, out there actively doing, gardening things and content and all of that sort of stuff that we like to, cover here on our show, and people we like to meet and visit and interview and all of that. There's so many out there, because that's really the thing. I think that just seals the deal when it comes to gardening, is that spiritual aspect of it all that we get, and I think that's really why we all fall so much, just kind of in love with this whole, hobby, as some people start out with, you know what I mean, and then becomes something that's really, for me, in a sense, almost really just kind of critical to my life. It's really what I do now. It's really what really drives me on a day-to-day basis. So, and I know a lot of people don't go that far, ultimately, but still get some of that same sort of relief and get that same sort of thing back from their garden spaces, too. But yeah, it's going to be great to talk to Leo next Saturday. So really looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing all of you. Thank you all so much for joining with us too, here on the show, here on the channel. Let's see here. We got Serena jumping in early with us there. Awesome. Yes, thank you, Serena, for joining with us today. Our moderator, the awesome moderator, Jay Dixon, joining with us from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Thank you, Jay, so much for being here, being a part of our channel, and doing everything that you do for us here on our live streams. It's just really great to have you here. Thank you so much. And then I think I saw Adam with us again. There we go, Adam. Awesome. Great to have you here as well, Adam. Thank you for being here. Thanks for helping out. Rick, awesome to see you again. Thanks for joining back up with us again. Really great to see you yesterday too. Great to have a couple of Australians in the house. That's one of the real fun things about this channel and this opportunity to be able to do this show and all of that, is to be able to talk with people like anywhere. I mean, we could just connect with people anywhere, and to be able to connect all the way, as we kind of teased and joked about yesterday, from the future. Rick joins us from the future when he's here on the show, as far as us here in America, because it's all the way the next day. So for us, it's Sunday. For Rick, it's Monday. Yesterday, it was Sunday when it was Saturday for us, for Mark joining with us too. So that's just kind of cool how we can do that, from all the way across the globe, on all the way on the other side of the planet, and be able to communicate with each other. And that just really makes everything so much more fun. Let's see here. Darth X says, yes, it was awesome having Mark on the live yesterday. Yes, it was. Mark was awesome. And again, too, I'll just mention, he was really great about coming here and being with us live. That was what was really kind of cool about it. He joined with us live, and had this great conversation, and then stuck around after the show. Me and him had a great conversation after the show as well too. He just giving me some tips and talk, and really just told me, and this is one thing I say, is that he was just giving me so many props, and just loved the show, loved being on the show, and was telling me all about that sort of stuff too. So it was really awesome, and he was just really giving yesterday, and I really appreciated that about him. So it's definitely awesome to see him. All right, hey, Steam Puzzle in the house. How you doing? Thanks for joining with us today. Thanks for being here. Thanks. I saw you yesterday too. Thanks for joining with the show yesterday as well too. Let's see here. Okay. Right on, right on. Let's see. Oh, Rick says, I learned a few things about Mark I didn't know. Yeah, see, and again, too, that is literally one of the greatest things about being able to do this and be able to connect with and have guests like Mark on the show, or even, earlier in the season, we talked to James Prigioni, these guys who have really excelled in the gardening content creation world, the sharing their garden spaces with us through YouTube and all of that they've really succeeded. And it's just really great to be able to have these conversations with them here on the show, because then we get to learn just a little bit more about them than what we get from watching their content on their shows, so that was really awesome as well, about having him and others as well too. And it really kind of goes for everybody has a really great gardening story, and especially those who are out there creating and making channels and pages and things for us to follow along through our garden season. So it's really awesome to be able to catch up with those garden stories with everybody. It's really the one thing I just absolutely love about this show, and being able to do this show and connect with all these people. So again, it's also really awesome to really have all of you too, because you guys really showed up yesterday too. And I think that was probably one of the best things about yesterday's show. It's just everybody showed up. Most everybody I've seen throughout the season who supports this show was here to support us yesterday, and I really, really appreciate that. I appreciate all that you all do to help support this show, to support this channel, to support our mission of, really, in a sense, it's kind of what I was talking with Mark about, is in some sense being kind of an ambassador of the gardening community in a way, a place where we can come together, have a conversation, learn a little bit more about our gardens by meeting so many of these awesome people out there who are creating and doing things in the gardening community. And a lot of people who have really great followings and all of that might be people you haven't heard of and you haven't got to meet before. And you get to hear about their garden stories and all of that too. So that's really great. And again too, the ability to have the chat too, and have you all come along with me and be a part of that conversation makes it just even better, just makes it even cooler, to be able to see everybody else, kind of in some sense chatting with themselves, and then also contributing to the conversation that we're having during the show, and just really great. So let's see here. All right. So today, again, too, we've got Scott on the show today here in just a little bit. He'll be joining with us to talk about all sorts of things in the garden. I hope you guys got some questions for him too, because it's going to be really great to talk with him here, and to I've got a few questions, and I've had a few things kind of pop up throughout the week, and so I'm kind of excited to talk to him about a few stuff here. It's just kind of that time of year. Let's see here. And that time of year, so we've got a lot of things going on. I know for Scott too, he's really growing himself too. Being from Colorado, his season's a little bit shorter, takes a little bit longer to get into it, but I know he's been into it now too. So we'll catch up with him and see also what's going on in his garden too right now, because that'll be a really good deal too. So all right. Before we get to Gardener Scott, though, each and every week we like to join up with our good friend Mark Boucher-Colbert in the garden.
Hey guys, I'm Mark Boucher-Colbert, and you are in the garden with MBC. Welcome back for another episode of In the Garden with MBC. This time we are just going to get down and dirty and talk tools, because it is a time when our tools are our right and left hand, literally. I mean, without all our garden tools, we're almost nothing, right? We could barely plant, and we can't even think about tending, prepping soil, weeding. It's all about the tools at this time of year. So let's get down and dirty. Let's talk about our tools, and I'm going to show you some of my favorites. I'm going to show you some of the size variations that why I'd want to go up or down in size with various tools. We'll talk a little bit about quality as well. Okay, let's get into the hand tools first. I use a lot of hand tools. I do garden at the rooftop of Noble Rot in Portland, Oregon, and there I'm almost exclusively using hand tools. Here I'm at my school garden at Franciscan Montessori Earth School, and I use hand tools in the down and dirty hand-to-hand combat. So when I'm right down there doing close-in weeding, I'm going to be using tools like this. Now I like both of these. This is called the Cobra Head for obvious reasons, right? It looks like a cobra in the right position. And this is a Nigeri Gama. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I have no idea. If anybody is of Japanese origin and can correct me on that, please do. This is one of my, this is a Japanese hoe though, made in Japan. One of my favorites. This is great for cultivating and narrow close-in weeding. This is great again for just disrupting the surface of the soil as new weeds are beginning to emerge. I love both these hoes, these hand tools, but as I mentioned, you got to get right down at the surface of the soil and either on your knees or bending your back. It can be a lot of stress and strain on the body to use these small hand tools. So I am thrilled this year to have just invested in, look at this, a long-handled Cobra, same head, now with a 54-inch or something handle, beautiful hardwood handle. Cobra Head, again, the name of the product. This is going to be awesome because now I can use it up tall, standing straight up, no strain on my lower back. That's a beauty. Same thing, I was absolutely thrilled to find at my local nursery this Nigeri Gama hoe, extra long handled. I paid $64.99 for this bad boy, but again, it's got that beautifully thin and sharp blade. You want to be careful with this. It looks like you could really jam things, and you just want to go, because it's so sharp and the metal is so thin, it's really easy to bend it on a rock. But anyway, using a drawing motion and again, like pulling that thin blade right under the surface of the soil, you can disrupt so many small weeds. It's a great hoe to just use very frequently and just be disrupting the surface around your crop. You know, if you don't want to damage the crop itself and your control skills aren't that good, then you can move in with the hand version of it for really close, precise weeding. But it's great to have these options, little and big. Here's another, I don't have the small version of this. This is called the Cape Cod Weeder. Again, it's a bit metal. It almost looks like a golf iron. It's at a bit of an angle to the plane, and it's got a bit of a beveled edge. Let's see if I can show you that. I don't know if we'll be able to really see that. There's a bevel in here that you can sharpen. And again, it's just used to draw toward you. With this and with the Cobra, I would also use it to make a furrow. I might lay down a string, make a furrow, and then drag this through and right along the string, making a furrow for small seeds. And that keeps everything in a nice, neat line if I have that string. And this allows me to make a nice, precise furrow. I can also, this one's a little heavier duty. The metal is 2 or 3 times as thick as that Nigeri Gama. So this one can be used as a jabber. I can be breaking up crusty soil. And if there's rocks on the soil, I'm not going to worry as much with this one. I'm not going to bend it or break it. It's pretty beefy. So again, I like to have a range of tools because there's a range of jobs. Let's talk about the quality of tools because that's important. Do you have a lot of these hanging around your garden shed? I do. I'm waiting to make some kind of welded art with them. But what they, make a great bird, right, or something? But what they symbolize is poor quality craftsmanship. Here, these are bow rakes, stiff metal garden rakes, which I like for moving materials. But the attachment is just a kind of a friction fit in the wooden handle. And I think anyone can figure out that's bound to come out sooner or later. And the fact that I have a lot of these attests to the fact that they don't last that long. What are you going to do with this stuff after it's done? Most people are going to throw it away. That's a failure for sustainability as well. So how about getting something beefy that's going to get the job done, but with a solid weld? Let's have a look at that. Let's see if we can see that. See that beautiful weld right there? The union of the handle and the comb part of the rake are solid. That's not coming apart, right? That's stronger probably than it was than either piece of metal on its own. A joint is incredibly strong, not coming apart. This is a A.M. Leonard rake, product placement. We're not getting, A.M. Leonard is not sponsoring this, but I have found some of their tools to be really wonderful. They have definitely had a lot of broken rakes, so they've designed something that's much stronger, much beefier. So you want to be looking for that wherever you buy your tools. And hint, hint, the big box stores aren't necessarily going to give you the most sustainable tools. I mean, there's some good brand names in there, but there's a lot of other junk tools, and you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to get what you pay for. That doesn't always mean that the expensive tool is the best, but you should definitely think about longevity, think about the stresses the tool is going to be under, and that will help you visualize in your mind whether the tool is going to be up for it or not. Of course, there's nothing like experience to teach you too what works and what doesn't. So after you accumulate enough of these, you're like, I think I need a different design, and I think I'm going to be willing to pay a little bit more to ensure that I just don't keep racking up stuff to weld. All right, let's talk about size again. Most basic tool, right? Just a standard digging shovel, but let's see, that's probably like a 7 or 8 inch blade wide and maybe about the same long. Great, powerful tool, right? We all have one, we all use it. But there are some times when I want to size down. Like this is maybe like a flower bed shovel. It's a little narrower. Let's see if we can do a comparison. See how it sits on this one? See if we can see. It's a little smaller, definitely narrower. It's easier to use and maneuver, and I often find myself reaching for the small version versus the big one, just because it's, like I said, again, lighter, really easy to maneuver. You don't tire yourself out with the material itself. You're moving materials, but the thing you're using to move it is not tiring you out. Then there's this is an even narrower shovel. This is a trenching shovel, and again, the tool is always suited to the job. So this would be used for example, if I were doing some digging irrigation line, I don't want to be digging 8 or 9 inches out each time of soil. That's a big amount of soil. Why do that when really the tubing that I have will fit in a 3 or 4 inch trench? That's all I want to do. So this could be useful for that kind of a job. The tool always matches the job, in other words. All right, let's talk about another size thing is, of course, another common tool is the rake, right? We've got this bow rake. Again, I prefer the metal. And again, a problem with rakes is this spring. This is a spring that provides some tension on the rake head. That's what usually breaks. So this is not one where I have replacement springs, but I'd be looking for a manufacturer that has a replacement spring or offers a whole warranty on the whole head, because that's what's going to break, and as soon as that breaks, your rake is useless. It doesn't have much resistance. It won't do the job. But raking is great. It's a nice long handle. Usually it's very comfortable movement, but there's times when I want to pick stuff up and a rake isn't good for that necessarily. In that case, kind of like the shovel, I wanted to downsize, and I found these beautiful little hand rakes that I call them bear claws with the kids. It's a great way to grab materials and pick them up and transfer. So I use these two kinds of rakes in tandem. This is good for a light job if I need to just pull things together into a pile, but mostly I'm making my piles with the big rake, staying comfortable. Then I'm using these guys to get down and transfer materials. Do we want to say anything more? Yes, we do. We want to say one more thing about quality. Beware the imposter. okay? Sometimes it's not the materials that are bad. In other words, these are two stirrup hose, right? So-called because they're kind of like the stirrups of a horse. It looks like the stirrup of a horse. But notice the slight design differences. Here, this one is not necessarily made of shabby materials. It's not the material, it's the design. The blade is straight at the bottom and kind of curved up, and the flex on the blade is very awkward. It doesn't move very much. The angle, when you're holding it to the angle at which the blade meets, oh, there's my timer. See how I'm keeping track of, I can't run over. So the angle of the blade meets the soil at an odd angle. It's not very comfortable and not very effective. This hoe probably costs $20. Here's one that costs, again from Leonard, $60, but it's superior. It's far superior in every way. Once you use this, you'll never want to go back to the other one. It has instead of being flat on the bottom, it has a slight curve that allows it to just skim under the soil a little more effectively. The blade is much thinner. It stays sharp on both sides, so it cuts on the push and the pull. The waggle is nice. And when it comes down to the soil, when you're holding it in a comfortable position, it's a perfect angle to come right up under the soil. Anyway, you have a lot of tools. You have some favorites. You have some tried and true ones that are tested. And I'm sure over the years, if you're a gardener, you've learned to recognize quality tools. Don't be afraid to size up. Don't be afraid to size down. Suit your tool to the job. If you do the job often enough, it's usually worth investing in a high quality tool. Find manufacturers you trust. Look for those sturdy elements of construction, solid shafts or really solid welds. These are the kinds of things that are going to ensure that your tools last. They should last nearly a lifetime if they're quality tools. And really, we don't want to be just breaking and discarding tools. So let's care for our tools. Let's look for the good stuff. And the tools are what are going to give you an amazing success in the garden. So get yourself all tooled up and then just go for it. All right, enjoy. We'll catch you next time in the garden with NBC. So long.
Awesome. Great segment there with Mark this week talking about garden tools. Everybody's got to have some good garden tools to get and manage all of our garden spaces. I was thinking about it. The garden fork, I think, is probably my favorite, most used tool that I use in the garden. It's a simple tool. It does so much, actually, and it's so useful in lots of ways. So that's pretty much the one I have. What's your favorite, and what's the one you use the most in the garden? Let us know in the comments there. And yeah, let's see here. Also, there was a comment that came in earlier. I wanted to say, let's see here. Rick mentioned this, and I love this right here. So he went to Spoken Garden and over at their place and left a comment and let them know that he came from the Let's Get Growing show. And this is something I've been talking about too, because we have all these great guests, and especially some of those guests on the Saturday show. And some of our guests here on Sunday show too, who, it's they could, use a good comment or so, let's go help them out. Let's go, give them a follow on their Instagrams if they're Insta gardeners, and or if they're over on Facebook, or even got other YouTube channels, especially those smaller YouTube channels. Showing some support from the Let's Get Growing audience is awesome. So if you can, definitely follow the links that we provide for you right down below in the description. Go check out all of these great channels and great people and all of that, that we get to see here on the show. And then drop them some comments and let them know right here from the Let's Get Growing community that, we are seeing them here on our show, because that's really great. So thanks again, Rick, for mentioning that. Thank you again for anybody else who has done that already. And if you haven't already, go and find some people that we've talked to, or if you see some people coming up in our shows, come join us, and then go leave them some comments, because that's always really awesome to do. All right, so we'll be right back here in just a moment, and we'll get started with this garden chat with Gardener Scott. Man, I've got some questions. I hope you do too. So see you in a moment. Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits. All right. Excellent. Let's welcome real quick in the chat there. I saw we got Skippy joining with us. It's been a little while. Good to see you again, Skippy. Good afternoon. I'm late today. That's all right. I've been running a little bit late to my to date as well too. I actually kind of just scooted in here right in time for the show today. So great to see you here today, Skippy. And Janet, awesome to see you. Awesome to have you here on the show. Thank you so much for joining with us today. We've got with us our good friend Gardener Scott. So he joins with us on the second Sunday of the month here on the show. And you know, each of the last few Sundays that he's been with us here on the show, I've been meaning to kind of get an intro for him and get an intro for having him on the show. So I kind of came up with something. I don't know about it. We might change it or something. We'll see what Scott thinks and all of that. But real quick here, let's check this out. It's time for all your garden questions answered with Gardener Scott. All right. Nice and simple. Let's welcome Scott to the show. Thank you so much, Scott, for joining with us here today. Great to have you back on the show. And again, actually, real quick, I just want to say, I mentioned this last time, and I think it's almost another. It feels the same way again too. It was like you were just here yesterday.
Yeah, feels like it.
So what do you think of the intro, right?
Nice intro. It's simple, it's sweet, it's green, and it says everything that needs to be said.
That's right. I don't know. Maybe we'll work on something. I just kind of snapped that one together, but I was like, I need to put together a little intro for Scott. He's on the show.
Nice. I appreciate that.
Excellent. So how's your Sunday going today?
Good. Been outside most of the day. Started early this morning, and it's a little bit cooler today than it has been most of the week, so it felt pretty good. And Mala got a little overworked and was napping while I was out, so all together it's good for both of us.
Oh, perfect. There you go. Excellent. You both got some good work in, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, I love it when that's one of my cats. One of the great things is that they like to hang out with me, but they're also cats. So a lot of their hanging out is napping over in the shade under a bush somewhere nearby where I'm at, So I always love it. It's great.
Well, Mala does work in the garden. I don't always see it. When I came in for lunch, I noticed that she had gladly dropped a dead mouse on the carpet. So I guess while I was in the greenhouse, she was hunting mice and at least got one of them.
Right. That's awesome. There you go. That's some good work too. I just found one of those the other day myself too. So the cats are also
always fun.
They're on the job as well too. Right on. Well, great to have you. So, how's things been going in the garden? I know I've been seeing that you were talking. You're just really getting out there now. You're really things are growing now, right?
Yep. Yep.
You're getting going. We've talked to you the last few times, and you're just kind of on the wait, just right on the cusp, and here we are now. It's full on gardening, right?
Well, well, not quite. This is
Not
the first
quite.
week that I've
Oh,
put my said I just hit 70 degrees in my soil a couple days ago, and
okay. Okay.
70 is my minimum for the tomatoes and the peppers. So this weekend I started putting in some peppers and tomatoes, and a lot of the seeds that I'm putting in, some of the specialty squashes and melons also need 70-degree soil to germinate best. So my bushes, my shrubs, my flowers, my garlic, all that's doing great, but that's all the perennial plants that are in the garden. The annual summer garden is just starting. So this picture behind me is my garden that I took earlier this week. All the beds are ready and they're all started to be seeded and transplanted, but still more work to do on that front.
Still, yeah, yeah. I think on that part though too, I think that's something that I think that just kind of keeps on going too, in a sense. We're always trying to get something new going, get something new put in and all of that, but it's just getting everything going to initially
Yeah.
is really the big work, right? I've been I was so and I've talked about this. I actually just got in and started, and I'm going to mention this too real quick. And I was talking to our featured guest yesterday after the show about making videos, because I make videos on the Urban Gardener. That's what I'm doing. But when I was on your show, you had me on your live stream. One of your initial questions was, so you're primarily doing the Let's Get Growing show now, and got me thinking. It was like, wait a minute, you know what? You really have been slacking, man. You need to get out there and make videos. So you really kind of pushed me in a sense through
Okay.
that question in a way too, because it was true. I mean, I was really focused here and really needed to get out in the garden and started showing people. So I've been doing that. I've been getting out
Good.
there
Yeah,
doing
I've
it,
noticed that.
making some videos and all of that too. But a lot of what was the holdup was, again too, is all of this other work that needs to be done. I had a ton of things that piled up that weren't garden related. But they had to be done before I could get garden stuff going.
Right.
And so that was kind of the holdup. And finally, I got caught up enough to get it going though too.
Good.
Yeah, yeah. Right on. Okay, so let's jump right in. I already see a couple of questions we've got from, let's see, Serena jumped in first here I see the first question. Will heavy mulching prevent Bermuda grass from taking root in the garden? And if so, how thick should the layer be? That's a pretty good question. I mean,
Yeah.
grasses in
Well,
general.
so Bermuda grass is a little unique. So
Mhm.
the grasses I have in my garden, we don't have Bermuda grass. They are prairie grasses, and heavy mulch is enough to keep most of those grasses from getting established in the garden. Heavy mulch is also really good for keeping grasses from growing, but it's primarily the grasses that spread from seed. So native
Mhm.
grasses, even lawn turf, if it seeds and it blows and the seeds get off on the side, they can sprout. And a mulch
Yeah.
can prevent that or at least deter that from happening. But Bermuda grass spreads by the roots. It really isn't primarily spreading by the seeds in the air. And so
Yeah,
while a
yeah.
heavy mulch can smother Bermuda grass and can minimize its spreading because it's spreading by the roots. Those roots can just keep growing and growing. There's enough energy in those roots that they can actually grow feet to a new area where there's not mulch. So you would
Yeah.
need to mulch very heavily. And we're talking probably like 6 inches of a good thick mulch to
Mhm.
really reduce the likelihood of Bermuda grass. Bermuda grass is just one of those
It'll
pernicious plants that if you want to get rid of it, you just got to dig it up and keep digging it and keep digging it until
yeah.
all the roots have dissipated
Get
their
it get
energy.
an get an excavator, right?
Exactly.
That stuff is horrible. I'm telling you, it pops up everywhere, all over my, especially because I'm in like these alleyway spaces. And I don't think I've even dug deep enough in some of my side alleyway even to get some of it. And I tried so hard when I put in my beds there to really get down there, and I thought I got most of all of I could find for a while. But again, like you said, some
Yeah.
probably just came from a spot that was just off to where I dug from, and just made it right into my spot. And then with all that new soil and
Oh,
just
yeah.
went wild right up into my garden bed. Next thing I'm trying to yank it out again and dig it
Yeah.
out.
It can be hard.
Yeah, that stuff's pretty bad. But yeah, again, the pretty much just got to pull
Yeah.
and do that. It's definitely a weed you got to do that work with.
And bindweed is like that. That's the one I have the biggest problem with. You can bury bindweed as deep as you want, but the roots are the same. It just
Mhm.
takes a little bit of a root, and it's got enough energy in it to just keep spreading. And so you pull and you pull and you pull until eventually you can reduce the likelihood. But all of those kind of plants that are spreading via the rhizomes or the roots, it's tough. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, they'll keep coming back. But here's another thought though, or what you think here is that as you just, like you said, you pull or you're just yanking the top off or you're just cutting the top off every time you do that, it's got to use more energy to keep coming
Yeah.
back up. So is there a point where it just kind of gives up? Can you
Yeah,
kill them off
that's
by
really
just topping it
what
off all the
happens.
time?
Yeah. The energy is stored in the roots from the photosynthesis. And so
Hmm.
if you can cut it, and especially uh, those those plants, for me, the bindweed, as soon as I see it sprout, as soon as I see it emerge from the soil, I'm pulling it, because the roots now have to expend more energy to grow a new plant for photosynthesis. And so if you can stay on top of it and eliminate those plants instantly as they emerge from the soil, you can get rid of it. But all it takes is a couple days with a plant, with that plant and with the leaves soaking up the sun, and it'll replenish the roots very quickly. So
Yeah.
eventually you can starve the plant because the roots
Hmm.
just don't have any more energy to create new growth.
And
But it
and
takes a
then
while.
yeah, and then the point then too is like anytime it looks like it's starting to sprout that new growth, knock it again kind of thing,
Exactly.
right? Because yeah, you don't want to get any growth and regaining energy.
Yep.
Awesome. Let's see here. Oh, we had a fun question here. Rick asked, does Mal eat vegetables from the garden too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in her dinner, I give her frozen peas and carrots every day, but when they're in season, I'll give them fresh from the garden. She really likes carrots, so when I grow carrots, I have to put my cattle panel hoops over the beds, or else she'll jump in the bed and get the carrots, because she likes to dig up the carrots. She'll
Oh yeah.
munch on lettuces and tasty leaves. Most dogs will eat grass, but when they find something that's tastier than the grass, they'll eat that too. So it's not a problem, but if she's given access to it and she gets bored and she can't find any mice,
Yeah.
then yeah, she'll. Oh, and tomatoes. She loves to just take a cherry tomato that's at her level and grab it and eat it. So she's a big fan of tomatoes.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I like that. And other people who have garden, or like James Prigione, he's got his little dog Tuck,
Yeah,
and
Tuck.
he's always eating on. You see him eating on the vegetables and all of that. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't think, oh, dogs can eat vegetables too.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just fine, and they're just good enough for them as well. But that's fun. I got cats, so I can pull something off and put it right up there. They're interested enough to take a sniff, and then they're just like a cat. They turn their nose and they're like,
That's
"There
right.
is no absolutely way I'm doing that."
That's right.
Right on, right on. So let's see here. So what are some things been going on in the garden lately?
So I've been expanding. So over my shoulder behind me is my gazebo that I put up last year.
Hmm.
And so last year the big
Nice.
projects were to put in concrete pavers in the center of it, and then I also have bricks that lead up from each 4 directions, pathways. And what I've been working on this week is creating permanent flower beds right around that gazebo, and I'm using more concrete bricks on end. They're actually, instead of lying flat, they're up vertically
Okay.
as the border for those garden beds. So it's a lot of work because it's all leveled, and I got to do the foundation for those blocks. But I'll have it in an update video one of these days. But the idea is to turn that centerpiece of the garden into a permanent structure where the beds never need to be replaced. Everything is permanent. And then the next step between the gazebo and my greenhouse is I'm going to build an enclosed garden with some fences around it so that the deer can't get in, and make it a nice little sitting area with a water feature. So still doing construction. This is year
Mhm.
5 of my 5-year plan. And it's these final structures that I've been working on as I've been waiting for the soil to get warm enough to plant. But
Yeah.
we're there. So now this next week will be primarily focused on getting the seeds to germinate and making sure that the plants survive my heat. And then I'll get back to the building.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Yeah, like I said, all those little kind of extra projects and things and all that. I've got a lot of those things going on as well too. Is my plans. There's always a 5-year plan, and I've had so many of them. But I got a good one right now, and I'm really focused on it. We're going to make some really
Good.
cool changes over the next year or two here with having this new owner and these new ideas we're talking about, getting some things growing, and like a front yard, turning the front yard garden beds, getting a
Nice.
chicken coop, is going to be something I'm going to be working
Nice.
and doing, and really kind of maybe almost going from a urban garden, just my back patio garden, to being able to utilize all these other spaces to kind of create almost like a urban homestead
Oh,
type of
cool.
thing, with some bees and chickens and things
Yeah.
like that. So I've got this bigger plan now. It's time to start implementing those small little things. Like you said, we got to get these little things done, and those eventually will be part of a bigger plan, that'll
Absolutely.
look
And
great.
you, even though you're in an urban setting, a lot of those things should work pretty well. I had intended to put some bees in. My original plan called for bees,
Yeah.
but as I've discovered here in my part of Colorado, uh,
Hmm.
it's xeriscaping. It's rock and gravel. Very few people have flowers. And there's a neighbor a few doors down that tried to do bees for a while. And there's just not enough food within a couple miles of where I live. We just don't have
Oh,
native
wow.
wildflowers, and people aren't growing flowers in their yard. So I've actually modified some of my plans. But luckily,
Yeah.
you live in an area that's got a lot more lush vegetation than I do.
Yeah, they should do pretty well around here for sure. And I'm kind of excited about that one, but at the same time, it seems like out of everything, like I know there's a lot to learn about a lot of things. Chickens aren't excluded, but I don't know. I take the chicken venture a lot easier than I do the bees. To me, I'm like, there's a lot to learn. I've really got to get this down. I got to get it figured out before I really dip my toes in,
Yeah,
because
absolutely. There's a couple different methods. I won't get too much into it, but check. There's a French method. It's not wearing. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's kind of an upside down process from the way that we do it here in the United States. So typically here in the United States, we have those white boxes, and you slide
mhm,
in the the
the little,
the inserts that the
yeah.
bees, put the honeycomb on. And many of them now have a little plastic center in honeycomb shape to give the bees a little bit of an advantage to get started. And then when it comes time to harvest the honey, you pull out the whole thing. Basically, you empty the hive. You got to shoo the bees away. You scrape off the honey, then you put it back in and start all over again. And this other method that was developed by a French monk over 100 years ago is you stack the boxes. And so the bees are going to move up to create the hive. So you have the box that you are planning to harvest your honey from, and after that is filled with honeycomb, you then put a new box on the bottom of the hive, and you do have to lift the whole thing as you slide a new box in. But then the bees will put the honeycomb in the lower box. And all you have to do is just take off the top box, and there's no more bees in it because they've already filled it with honeycomb, and now they're working at a lower box. And so
Yeah.
you don't need all the smoke and the protective gear and all that kind of stuff, because all you're doing is waiting for the bees to move into their lower home, and they
Yeah.
leave all the honey behind, and you just take the box off and harvest all the honey. So that was the
Wow.
method I was going to use, and I'm kind of sad I won't be able to do that.
So you just so again, so then are you just kind of replacing underneath
Yeah.
a new
So
one?
you need a lift, like a lever system where you can just pick up the whole hive group, and typically it's a 2-box group, and then you
Right.
add a new box at the bottom, and as the bees move down to fill up, then you just by hand can pull off
Yeah.
the top box.
The
So
top
yeah,
one.
it's
Yeah.
just lifting, putting a new in the bottom, lifting, put a new at the bottom, and depending on how many bees you have and how long your bee season is, depends or determines how many harvests of honey you can get.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just in an aisle at this food store where they had just so much honey and all the different brands and all these different I was just like, wow, I just to me it just kind of really amazed me about like
Oh,
think about how many bees and how much work it took just right here in this one store and these shelves right here of honey and all
yeah.
that. But then I also think like how cool would it be if I just could go out in the back and get my own. How yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that
It's
would
a
be
lot of
awesome.
fun. The teacher I worked with at the Galileo Garden Project had bees, and a couple times she would bring the hives in, and the students and I, of course, helping. She had a little centrifuge set up like a barrel, and it was great. I mean, the kids could do it, so it's a good family project to raise bees. And actually, the kids, it's so simple; they can do the harvesting of the honey as well as an adult can.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited about doing that sort of project. It'll probably be one of the more later ones, but that is going to be fun. I'm really fascinated by it and really kind of odd for me. I was one of those kids that would go running from a bee anytime I saw one. Getting stung by a bee was probably the worst event of my childhood life.
It is
So,
for a lot of people.
but now being older and being fascinated, it's now kind of see that how that everything's kind of gone in the other direction. And I can just imagine myself being out there, really, being one of those guys who's just comfortable enough to be out there. They don't
Yeah.
need the whole bee suit, maybe a net around the face so they're not in your face, that
Yep.
sort of thing. But that I just really fascinates me. And I'm like, man, wouldn't that be a way when you're that comfortable with life and nature and just doing things and working with these bees that really and I don't know, it's you think of those
You need to
memories
do
of
it.
when you were a kid. I'm gonna do it definitely. Right on, right on. Well, here, you know what? I'm gonna drop in. I got a question I was thinking about. I saw this being talked about, and I thought, you know what? I need to ask Scott about this because now I've heard about, pruning tomatoes, and there's tons of people talking about tomatoes and pruning tomatoes, taking the suckers off, basically. A lot of people do that. And then there's a lot of people that advocate don't take the suckers off because it produces more fruit and all of that as well too. So there's a lot of like difference of opinion when it comes to that. But then there was one thing that went even just a little bit further that I was wondering about because I hadn't really heard of this before. But and I don't know if I've got which one is right or not based on what I was hearing from some things I was reading from some people. Determinate versus indeterminate tomatoes. Now, is there a difference between the suckers of determinate and indeterminate tomatoes? And is this where, like some people talk about whether you should have a preference of pruning or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So there really isn't a difference in the sucker.
Yeah.
Tomato plants and some will sucker more than others. So at the crook between the main stem and one of the leaf junctions, you'll have a sucker. that will grow, and that sucker is capable of growing into a completely new plant. You can remove
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and plant it, and you'll
Yeah,
get
I've
another
done that.
tomato plant.
Yeah.
The key difference between the determinate and the indeterminate is why there's some confusion about whether you should remove the suckers or not. A determinate tomato plant is what many of us will also call a bush tomato. It grows
Yeah.
to a determined size, typically 3 or 4 feet tall and 3 or 4 feet wide. It's very bushy. And so you let the suckers grow on that. That's what gives it its bushiness.
Right.
And it's going to flower and set fruit all within a 2 or 3 week period. And then essentially the plant is done. It's not going to grow any taller. It's not going to grow any wider. It's achieved its job. And so since all of the fruit comes at the same time, the more branches you have means the more fruit you have. And that's generally the way people approach pruning determinate tomato plants, is to not take off the suckers so they can
Right.
have a lot of fruit. But
Yeah.
for both determinate and indeterminate, every time you leave a sucker on the plant, the roots have to be able to feed that branch. And
Right.
so the more branches you have, the more the roots are working. And depends on how good your soil is, depends on whether you fertilize or not. But if the roots haven't grown big enough to support a big plant, it will still
Mhm.
flower and it will still fruit, but now there's not enough energy to put into the fruit. So you'll get a whole bunch of fruit, but it'll be smaller fruit. So that's the
Yeah.
trade-off with leaving the branches on determinate plants, is you get a whole bunch of
Yeah.
tomatoes all at the same time, but they
Yeah.
may be smaller tomatoes than you want. So it is okay to prune off some of those suckers on a determinate plant, with the realization that you may get fewer tomatoes, but they're going to be bigger tomatoes. And
Huh.
then on an
There you go.
indeterminate plant, because it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing until something kills it, usually a frost, it's the
Yeah.
same idea. If you let all of those suckers grow, they're going to grow 5, 6, 10 feet long. And now you have a huge plant that may be unmanageable. You might not even be able to walk into that part of your garden to be able to harvest the tomatoes, but the root system may not be strong enough to support such a big plant. And so that's where most of us here remove all of the suckers on an indeterminate tomato plant so that the vine can keep growing and flowering and fruiting, flowering and fruiting. I do a balance. I'll leave 2 or 3 primary stems. So I'll let 2 of the suckers, sometimes more, grow into full size branches,
Mhm.
and then I'll prune off all of the other suckers. So instead of
Yeah.
having 50 branches on a tomato plant, because some of those indeterminate tomato plants can get pretty big, and if you count how many times you're removing those suckers, it can be dozens of suckers
Yeah.
on a single plant.
Mhm.
But my season's short enough that I do want as big a crop as possible. So I don't remove all of the suckers on the indeterminates. I do allow some of them to grow and then just try to maintain the size that I'm looking for.
Yeah, yeah. I remember us talking about this a couple years back when I was doing that contest and we were talking about
Mhm.
tomatoes. And I remember one of the things I did though too was I kept the first 2 suckers. They're kind of not really the first, but one of the one
Yeah.
of the first. One of the first, whereas then it was basically the first that you would see at the top of the coming from the soil up, it would be the first. So then it was basically 4 branches that were going up.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I have 4 branches going straight up, and I take suckers off of all of those from that point.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because each of those suckers is going to grow into a new vine,
Mhm.
and that new vine is going to have all of those suckers. So that's why I say
Exactly.
it'll be dozens of suckers that you have to pinch off on a tomato plant, especially if you let a few of them grow.
Yeah, that's a great way to do. Other types of things about pruning tomatoes. There's this one of the ways I also do it is a good method and idea is also, first, I'm cutting stems all the way up until my tomato plant's getting like maybe a couple feet tall, but I'm getting about a foot and a half off of the ground, so it's all clear and open.
Yep.
Right, because that's really important, right? To make sure that your tomatoes are kind of up off of the ground, right?
Absolutely. So most of the diseases that our tomato plants get tend to be viral, and so it's and also fungal. So it'll
Yeah,
be the spores in the ground. It'll be the viruses that are on the ground. And so what happens is it rains or you are watering, and all it takes is just a microscopic piece of your soil to bounce up onto a leaf. And now you've got one of those viral or fungal diseases that tend to be most likely. Bacterial diseases, the same thing, but at least in my area, they're not as common. And so there's a couple things you can do. First off, mulch so that any
hmm
of those soil-borne diseases are covered by a mulch and less likely to bounce onto the leaves. But then I do the same thing. I trim off all those leaves and branches to about a foot and a half so that even if there is exposed soil or if those spores are on top of the mulch now instead of on top of the soil and they bounce up, there's nothing to bounce onto because even in a heavy rain, the drops typically are not going to bounce 18 inches into the air to land on a tomato leaf. So that's one part of it. And then the other is air circulation, particularly with the fungal diseases. You want a lot of air circulation around your plant. And if you're
yeah,
not pruning off not only just the lower ones, but periodically some of the intermediate branches, it can the leaves can be so close together that it creates a really humid environment, and that can also encourage some of that disease growth. So you're pruning for air circulation, you're pruning to keep diseases off of your plant. And then also, like just talking about amount of energy that the roots can provide to the plant. By taking off all of those, you're giving more energy to the remaining branches and flowers and fruit.
and then thus the idea as well too. A lot of gardeners will prune all the way up to the first set of fruit.
Yeah, I don't do that as much,
Yeah,
but yes, in an indeterminate tomato plant, you'll get the first flower will form low on the plant, and as
mm,
the fruit is forming, at the next junction up, you'll get another flower,
yeah,
and then as that one begins to fruit, farther up the plant, you'll get another one, and so it is sequential on the indeterminate tomato plant. Well, once that lowest fruit has been harvested, or even right up to the point of harvest, you can definitely prune off some of those leaves. And now that sends more energy up to the new flower and the new fruit and the new growth. And
yeah,
so the assumption is as the plant grows, you're basically keeping a static amount of energy that the plant requires. And the roots are continuing to grow. So there will always be enough energy for the plant to produce that nice big beefsteak tomato because you're not
yeah.
overloading the growth on the plant for the roots to support.
Right on. Yeah, lots of good stuff there. Yeah, it's tomatoes are in the ground for me finally.
Nice.
Man, I'm telling you, this is one of my actually my videos is I've been talking it up and both the peppers and tomatoes. I work really hard at making sure I get them all set and ready. And we talked up the whole idea of hardening off plants, man. I'm really on this and I really tell people, hey, this is a really kind of important part
Yeah.
of getting our plants out into the garden for those of us who starts early indoors or even as you've said too in greenhouses and places too. And man, I'm telling you, I blew it. I blew it on
Oh,
one
no.
day. One day, I'm telling you, I had them out there and it was nice and cloudy early on. So I was like, this is perfect. We got them out. It's nice and shady. I got them out on this nice open spot and went and got busy with work and doing some things. And it wasn't until like a little bit later in the day as I'm working off in another part of the day, right? You know, and I'm out in the sun. I'm like, it's getting hot out here. And it just didn't even think about it until like it was a little bit too late for the first day of these things being out there. And
Yeah.
and then I went and looked, but it was, and here's the great thing though too, and I explained this in my video and I was showing people this and talking about it, is that tomatoes, if there's any plant that you're really going to make a mistake with, tomatoes are kind of the ones, because
Yeah.
they'll grow back from all of everything. I had
Yeah.
just measly looking poor little things, and you know, I got them potted up and fed a little bit, and within a week or so they're bursting back to life and growing
Yeah.
again and no problem and all of that. This pepper's a little more raggedy over the
Oh, that's too
situation,
bad.
you know, but again, they will in time, you know, recover and grow and be, you know, vibrant eventually. But man, I can't believe it. And even that's what I try to tell people, even in the videos. Like, here I am. I know how important this is. I'm a seasoned gardener. I do this. I make videos showing you all this, but it's important to also show you the videos where, you know what, I just blew it, you know, and
Oh, yeah. It happens to all of us.
yep, exactly. Right.
Not this year. I was on top of my hardening off. So
Good deal.
luckily
Good
it
deal.
all worked out okay. But there was one day that it was close. They'd only been out for like 2 hours. It might have been on the
Yep.
first day. And
Mhm.
it was sunny and no clouds at all. And I thought I would give them 2 hours. And at the 2 hour point, they were starting to look like they were suffering. And so, same thing. If I would have gotten or been out in the garden to get more work done and give it one more hour, I think I would have lost some plants. It can happen that quickly.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things too. I was very lucky I didn't have any losses. No plants died, didn't lose any
Good.
plants, but man, I cooked them up a pretty good bit, lost a lot of leaves, you know, really kind of puts the plants in shock a little bit. But actually I was really surprised about how fast though the tomatoes just bounced right back. Like, hey, no
Yeah, it's
problem, man.
crazy. I went on a trip in the middle of April, and right before going on the trip, I started my tomato seeds and had a dog sitter, and she would check on the house. And I had it all set up with the heat mat, with lights on timers. And then right before we were set to come back, it was a 8-day trip. The the dog sitter who was checking on the plants made a comment like, "Aren't the lights supposed to be on?" And my my
Oh boy.
power strip had tripped
Oh, no.
and turned off. And so when I came back, the seeds had now been growing for about a week and a half, almost going on
Oh,
2
boy.
weeks, since they were put in the ground with no light. And so
Yeah.
I actually took a picture and put it on my Instagram page.
Were they
They
pretty
were they
leggy?
weren't growing vertically. They were actually on the ground like little snakes. The stems were white because I have a window down there, but the window is off to
Right.
the side. So they were all
Yeah.
on the side, curling on the ground, trying to seek out that little bit of light off to the side. So
Wow.
I started new seeds, but I kept those tomato plants growing just to
Just to
see how they
see.
would recover. I put them under
Okay.
strong light. They started growing vertically. All those white stems turned to green stems. They didn't
Mhm.
straighten, they still had that snake shape to them. But
Yeah.
because I had started new seeds and because of the stunting and all the lack of light, the new seeds that germinated and became seedlings caught up very
Yeah.
quickly. And
Beautiful.
actually, those are the ones that I'm putting in the garden. But since I had tried it side by side just to see how quickly they would recover,
Yeah.
it was an interesting experiment. They did recover. I then stopped watering that tray and just set it off to the side. It
Yeah.
took almost 3 weeks for those tomatoes to die with no water and
Yeah.
just a little bit of light from a nearby lamp that I had on them. And they weren't even in a potting mix. They were still in the seed starter soil. So no nutrition,
Yeah.
very little light, and no water. And they still grew for almost 3 weeks.
Goes to show you how much water they really store up in that main stalk and that main stem. You know, tomatoes especially
incredible.
are really, you know, they really pull water. That's just really great. And cool experiment too. You know, when you got those situations, you always got to kind of test them out just to see. You got to test and see what goes. And again, too, I've done that too with tomatoes. In fact, I did it with a batch of tomatoes this year. I tried this experiment of putting because I have the indoor light station, and I have shop lights, like 3 of them that kind of hang over, and I put my seed starts underneath. Well, someone gave me the idea that I should take one of the seed starting trays, instead of using a heat mat, I should just set them up on top of those lights, you know, and those will work as a heat, and it worked great.
Nice.
But they don't have light. And again, too, if you walk off and don't pay attention for a little bit of time, you know, there's no light and they start stretching up.
Yeah.
But luckily it wasn't for very long, and they weren't very, you know, it was like only a day, and they were only so much. And again, too, just fine and recovered just well. But I'm just having a great year for all that stuff. I need to pay better attention when it comes down to
That's
it.
okay.
Right on. Let's see here. Jay asked a question just a minute ago I wanted to get to here real quick. Could you recommend go-to easy tools for insect and disease identification?
So there's a lot of apps out there. Many of them you have to pay for. Some of the free ones are okay. I don't really have a favorite. But what I find easiest for everybody who's got access to the internet is to identify the insect yourself. So look at it and try to pick out what you think are the strongest characteristics, and then Google that. And so if you say yellow insect with black stripes, pictures are going to pop up, and one of them is probably going to be a Colorado potato beetle. And so you look at those pictures and go, that's it. And that's the same way that a lot of these apps work, is they take a picture, and then whatever AI they're using identifies the primary characteristics of that insect, and then it searches the database and tells you what it is. So that's honestly what I do. Is I've got some of the free apps, and I think it actually, some of them are more trouble than they're worth, because they don't give me the answer I'm looking for. Whereas Google has access to the entire, history.
And then
even
too, and even too, there's even a range also too that I always find, like if I'm looking at, say, flowers, insects, whatever I'm trying to identify, you know, if it's not the first one, it's the next one over.
Exactly.
You know, like, oh, there's that, you know, so there's a few options for you to be able to look at and go, okay, and really, really nail it down to what it is. And I recommend that too all the time to people. I'm like, okay, why we worried about so-and-so app this or so-and-so app that? You just got a simple Google app, and all you got to do really in Google, you don't even have to take a picture. You just pull the Google app up, and you can take it right up to the thing, and it'll do that whole search for you right there without any picture. But most of the time I just take a picture real quick, and then I research it later on, kind of thing.
And if you know the difference, there is a difference between a bug and a beetle, and you know there's difference between different larval stages. And so if you recognize it as a larva versus an adult, that can help refine the search as well. So if you say beetle, or a red beetle with black spots, guarantee you that a ladybug is going to pop up. But if you say red bug with black, then you'll probably get a squash bug picture. Right. So, you know, that as we become more and more knowledgeable doing these kind of searches, you can refine your search to the point that almost every time I'm looking for something that I'm not sure about, just with the identification, the first picture that pops up is the same picture that I took on my phone.
It's usually pretty right on. most of the time. And that's what I say is like it's just nice and simple. No need to worry about trying to find something or have something recommended in a sense. It's just simple. We've all had it for a long time. And like you said, Google's been collecting data for longer than anybody. So if anybody has, especially in the sense of like identification though, and that sort of stuff, those sort of databases and stuff, if anybody's got the answer, Google has it for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think we're on the similar lines here as Serena was asking, what is the orange spotted bug that looks like a ladybug or lady beetle but isn't? Is it beneficial?
So look it up, Serena. This is a good practice for you to do this. Because there are some Japanese beetles that look like ladybugs that are not beneficial. But exactly, I'm not Google, but you could type that same thing, orange spotted bug, and see what pops up. And if you don't get the answer, say orange ladybug with black spots or whatever. But yeah, I go for it, Serena. I suggest use this as a practice session because it really is easy to do. You don't need to wait for me or Enoch or somebody else to be able to answer the question because it can be so quick. Just a simple search.
Exactly. And one of the things too, I was just thinking about there is that, you see this a lot, especially when it comes to lady beetles and this other one. What is it? The Asian lady beetle or whatever.
Yeah, there's some Asian beetles that it comes down to the number of spots they have that will determine one over the other and whether it's harmful or not.
Isn't there also a clarification up on the crown too with the white?
Yeah, the shape of the where the thorax joins the head. There's some differences in the shapes, and so that's why you start with just that generic search, and you'll find out that that's not quite right. And so then you put I forget it. It's the 5-spotted Asian beetle or 7-spotted Asian beetle. It's something like that. And that's how you tell, is because you count the spots.
Yeah. And what is it that, and I'm not sure if I'm actually really clear on this. I know it's just, it's people don't like them. These are invasive beetles. What are they doing to, that makes them so invasive that they're not?
Are you talking about the cicada outbreak?
Or no, the Asian lady beetles.
Oh, the Asian lady beetles.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly. It's not a problem that I've had, so I haven't done much research in them other than to see the pictures and know that they're a little bit different. But I'm guessing it has something to do with the larval stage, and it probably is plant eating, whereas like the ladybird beetle is eating aphids. It might be that those other beetles are as grubs or larvae might be more harmful, but I'm really not sure about that.
Yeah. I need to look that up too a little bit more. That, and the other thing that's really causing a stir right now is those jumping worms.
Sure.
Yeah. So we got all these little invasive things out there that aren't what we should have in our normal environment.
Yeah, and they can really take over and wreak havoc if they're allowed to grow in an area that they have no natural predators or really no easy way to deal with them.
Or well, what was this other one I just saw the other day? I think I don't know if I got the name right, but it's like a hammerhead worm. These are worms that if like you could chop them up into 30, 40 pieces and each one of them will grow a new worm again. Like that is really,
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. But invasive worms, invasive beetles, all that sort of stuff, I don't know. I'm lucky enough, I guess I really haven't had anything kind of bother my garden quite yet, but
well, I think, and I talked about this in one of my Monday live streams recently. The more diversity you have, the bigger your garden is, and the healthier your garden is, the less likely you are to have a lot of these pests. These pests are going after weak plants and plants that may not be growing where they should be growing, because a lot of people try to grow plants that maybe are beyond their capabilities at that point. And then the insects come and they devastate as pests. But, a garden like yours and a garden like mine that have been around for years, and it's healthy and it's strong, and we've got natural predators that are attracted to our herbs and our flowers and our grasses, and nature
Mhm.
just kind of takes care of itself. So I have very few of my experienced gardener friends who do have a big pest problem. Occasionally,
Yeah,
there's an
yeah.
outbreak or infestation, but on a year-to-year basis, the more familiar and experienced you get with gardening, I think the fewer problems you have, because you just end up doing everything right, whether you realize it or not, is just
Mhm.
standard practice. And that reduces a lot of the likelihood of the insect pests becoming a problem.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, and it's again too, like you said, it just comes down to, keeping things healthy, starting with the soil,
Yep,
up to the
absolutely.
healthy plants. Once we got healthy plants and we've created an ecosystem of healthiness throughout our garden, those balances are made, and like you said, we can, stave off a lot of these sort of issues that people are dealing with.
Yeah.
Issues like Serena again here, and I remember, Serena asked this question, I think, yesterday, or I think it was maybe during my pre-show yesterday or something. I know it was recently, but, she was asking, "What eats hosta but is difficult to find? I have leaf where there are
Slugs.
several holes."
Slugs are notorious for eating, and snails. Slugs are
That's
notorious for
exactly what
eating
I said, yeah.
hostas. I don't know if you had mentioned that when she had asked earlier, but
Yeah,
if you've got holes on your hosta and you
that's
can't
prime
find
suspect.
the insect, it's probably a slug.
Exactly, because while you're out in the daytime looking and seeing these holes, those things are off underneath of some rock somewhere,
Yep.
maybe some crevice of a bush, or up underneath of some sort of really shady spot, where it can hide out till nighttime, and
Yep.
then it comes out and just munches and eats all of it. And they love hosta.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's another thing that you could do as well. You can do a search on the type of damage. So if it's a hole on a hosta, it's probably a slug. But if the
Yeah,
the
outer edge.
the leaf tips have been torn off, it's
Mhm.
probably a deer, because of the way that deer will eat. They kind of grab and tear it.
Oh,
If
yeah.
it's like edges of the leaf that have been eaten, but a much cleaner edge, then it might be a vole or a rabbit or something like that. And so, just like you could Google what the insect is, you can Google what the leaf damage is on a plant and get a picture. That's one of the first ways I was able to identify leaf cutter bees in my garden, because it's a type of bee that will actually cut a little circle out of the leaf, and it's very distinctive, and it's different than a rabbit and different than a deer and different than a slug, and it's a bee that's doing it. But until you see the picture, you would never believe that a bee is eating a circle in your leaf.
Yeah, that's kinda strange how they do that, right? And they're so perfect.
Exactly. They
They're
really
so
are.
perfect. It's amazing. Nature is so amazing. So let's see, Rick here joining us from Australia. He mentions that cicadas were bad at his place in summer as Australia is now heading into their winter. So he's all
Yeah.
done with summer. And so
Yep.
this last summer, he had a bunch of cicadas. And I'm not sure if Rick knows, and he might have read, but here for us in the United States, we're about to be invaded by two big, huge broods. I'm not even sure if they emerged yet. I'm not even sure if I've read about
They
that.
have. I think the big uh influx is supposed to be in July. I forget exactly, but some of them have started to emerge, but the billions that they're expecting really haven't come yet.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we did talk about this, I think, even on our first
Mhm.
Q&A we did, and, from what I remember you were saying, they're not really, you don't have to worry about damage. They're
No,
just
because the adults,
up to
they're
mate
not
and
eating.
get something done and die off, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it's interesting. You know, I wonder about cicadas. I mean, and I'm sure they're all over the world, of course. You know, they're not exclusive to the US and all of that, but it'd be interesting to learn about how those broods work and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff in other places
It
as
is
well.
pretty fascinating because the adults are going to emerge, they're going to mate and then lay eggs. And that's it. That's the whole purpose of their life. But it takes, like with the 17-year cicada, it takes 17 years
Yeah,
for that to happen. And it's living all that time underground. And
it's
it's
amazing.
just, it's absolutely incredible.
And then I think what it is, they just what it is it like they feed off of some sort of like underground root matter or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like
They
that.
basically live in the tree roots. And
Yeah,
so,
but
they're
not
living
enough
underground.
where it may causes any problem. I mean, the trees are
Yeah.
producing enough root that these things can feed from.
And it's not like, some of the grubs we have to deal with in our garden where they start eating and they keep eating, and in a
Yeah,
week they've
yeah.
killed all the plants. They're just, sucking on the root every now and then just to stay alive for 17 years.
I don't
And,
know
they're
for
not
sure,
trying
but yeah, it might be
to
just like a once
grow.
a year thing, right?
Yeah. And so, some of these forests that they're going to emerge, there'll be billions of these
Man, I can't even believe that.
cicadas emerging, and all the trees are still strong and healthy
Yeah.
because, they're eating, they're
Mhm.
feeding on the tree roots, but not enough to actually kill the tree.
Yeah, I remember years and years ago, back in the early 90s, I did a visit to New York out in Queens. We were out in Queens in New York, and there was a brood that was out that year, and it was everywhere, and it was one of the most eeriest things, was
Yeah.
walking around in these neighborhoods with these trees just full of these things just making this noise. I mean, that you just can't even imagine unless you're in there. It's just, yeah, it just goes on. But the worst part about it is trying to walk around because you can't walk anywhere without stepping on one of
Yeah,
them
that's right.
because
They're
they
covering the
just
ground.
fall from the trees dead onto the ground, and they're big bugs too. So
Yeah.
you're like kicking them around and trying to get through as you're walking through. But yeah, cicadas are pretty wild and fascinating though too. Like you said, the whole lifespan thing is just amazing. 13-year broods, 17-year broods,
Yeah.
so they have different types have different years it takes for them to mature. But yeah, that many years for just a little, I don't know, do we call that one a bug? I'm not sure, but
Yeah, actually, I think it is a bug, but
I'm
don't
not
quote
sure.
me on that. I don't think it's a beetle. It might be a beetle.
Right. Excellent, excellent. All right, let's see here. So I guess this would be a reminder real quick before we get moving on here. We got just a few more minutes left. If anybody's got any sort of pressing garden question, any issues you've been dealing with in your garden, anything like that that you would like to ask Scott here, definitely jump into our chat right now with a question. And let's see here. Rick was saying that the frogs were plentiful too.
Yeah, and well, and I've
Betcha, huh? Right?
seen people asking, why do cicadas exist? Why do they spend all this time below ground and then they come above ground? What good are they? And really, it's the food. They're a great food source for a lot of animals, and so it has to be a big frog to eat one of them. But
Yeah.
that's the same with mosquitoes. There are a lot of insects that we wonder what's the good of that insect. It doesn't do any good. Well, it does. It's a food source for a lot of animals in
A lot of
nature.
birds probably
Yeah.
too. Yep, exactly. There's always a purpose for everything, whether,
Absolutely.
we might even be the oddest thing or whatever, but it serves some sort of purpose, whether it's large or minute. That purpose has, has a need. Let's see here real quick. Oh, LP jumped in real quick here. Have you ever dealt with rotting garlic scapes?
I
They look
haven't.
white
My
in case
scapes have
you're thinking.
always been nice and sturdy and strong, but that's probably because I have really low humidity, and so very little rots in my garden unless I'm just really, really overwatering it. And so there are some garlic pests that will eat the bulb, and that can lead to the scape essentially rotting. It basically stops growing, and at the base where it joins the garlic bulb, it'll fall over. So that might be an issue. Try digging one of them up and see what the bulb looks like, and if the bulb is rotted, pull it apart and look at the individual cloves. I have had garlic that I've harvested, and as I was separating the cloves, saw that there was one of these burrowing, I forget what they're called, a garlic root beetle or something like that, or root borer, or whatever it happens to be. So I have had some that have damaged some of my cloves, but not to the point that it ate the whole clove or caused the scape to look like it was rotting. So that would be the first thing. I'm doubting that you've overwatered it to the point that you're killing the plant with too much water. I think you probably know that's not the issue. I would dig it up and see if you can see what's happening to the bulb, and then get back to that identification thing and see if maybe you can identify what it is that's causing the problem.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah. Again, like you said, hopefully it's not something that's making its way down into the rest of the bulb.
And I see LP has said they pulled that they look normal. They pulled 2 and look normal. So not sure what the issue could be, other than maybe some other damage that you're not aware of, that, because if that stalk, the scape where it joins the main leaves, if that's damaged or partially eaten, then the whole scape is going to fall over and just wither away. So look closer at the scapes and see if maybe there was some damage that might have been close to the leaves, and that could be another issue that could cause that.
Okay, let's see. Bettina asks, can you plant the long white eyes that have fallen off the potatoes that were planted too late? So
yeah, if they've already
the ones I've been
fallen
going
off,
stretching out, and then they've
yeah. So those are they're okay to plant. And I saw Tony joining, and he can correct or add to anything that I say about potatoes.
Tony's potato guy.
You can grow those white. All it is that it's growing, and it didn't get any light, like I was talking about my tomato seedlings earlier, and that's why they're white. They never got any light. Normally, when we chit our potatoes, we actually encourage some of that root growth. We do it in a setting that's got enough light that they're going to grow green. And that's what we plant into the garden to grow our potatoes. But it still needs a food source. And so that's what the potato is. And so we will cut the potato in half, or we'll put the whole potato in the ground. And that's what's feeding those rooty growths. It's actually a stem underground. And then we're going to end up with our potato harvest. If those white ones have fallen off or been, broken off, first, they don't have that energy stored. There's never been any photosynthesis. It's just been using the energy from the tuber. And there's really no more energy to sustain continued growth. And so you can plant them, sure, but it's going to become food for earthworms and bacteria. They're going to rot away, and it's really not going to grow into a potato plant.
Yeah, because that potato is the storage. That's what's, that's where all that energy is, right? And and that's why if you harvest your potatoes and you get in there and there's always that mushy, gross thing in there, you're like, oh, what? And you find that was your original potato right there, as it's had all of its energy depleted from it in order to produce that whole plant. But that's a good question there. All right. Well, let's see here. Let's see. Oh, Betty says, thank you. Thought as much, but wasn't sure. Planted them anyway, just in case.
And if
Before we
there's
come to
enough
that point, let's
potato,
experiment, right?
yeah, if there's enough potato on the edge, all you need to do if you plant potatoes is just the eye, and you don't even need to chit it. You don't need any extra growth. And as long as there's that food source for that new plant to develop, it'll grow fine. So it's possible if instead of like the white tip breaking off and that's what you planted, if you planted it and if there was any of that food remaining from the potato, you never know. You might actually end up with a little plant. Probably won't be that strong initially, but got nothing
Yeah.
to lose by trying.
That's what I'm saying. Little garden experiments are
Yeah.
always fun, and they teach us just a little bit more about what we're doing or what we're growing, and yeah, always encouraged to try new things in the garden.
Yep.
It's helpful in learning along the way for sure.
Okay.
Well, awesome. Well, I think we've had a lot of really great questions today. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I wanted to actually ask one more real quick here because it is this kind of thing, and I just want to
Okay.
get you.
I'm
Maybe we can
petting
end
Mala.
with.
Mala keeps nosing me because she's telling me it's time to go out to the garden.
All
But
right.
go for
I
it.
think this is
This will be the last one.
Yep, this is a good ending, I think, right here, because one of the things is we are changing seasons from a cooler season to a warmer season right now. So a lot of us have cold crops that are just we're pulling out the last. And I was just noticing I have my last head of lettuce for this little Tom Thumb lettuce that I have out in the garden, and there's a couple of other things that are out there that look like they're about ready to go to seed. And maybe you could just kind of end with letting everybody know about, maybe leaving some of these things behind a little bit and let them go to seed for some of those cool weather crops and save some seed, right?
Absolutely. I've got some cilantro that I did that last year. I let it go to seed. The seeds fell. This year in spring, as soon as the soil was warm enough, I had cilantro plants growing. They're bolting. They're starting to grow to the point that they don't taste like cilantro should taste. That's
Mhm.
typically what happens when we let our plants go to seed, is they become bitter and lose that normal flavor. But I'm allowing some of those cilantro plants to do the same thing this year.
Yeah.
So it's possible I will have years worth of cilantro in spring and never plant again. Basically, I'll let some of those seeds fall. I also save some of the seeds to plant in other areas. And I've done that with spinach. I've done that
Mhm.
with lettuce. I've done that with kale. There's a lot of plants that if you just let it stay in the ground until they reach that point of flowering, sometimes it takes 2 years, like with onions and carrots, the biennials.
Yeah.
But absolutely, if you're growing, let's say you're growing 6 rows of carrots and it comes time to harvest the carrots, leave 3 carrots in the ground
Mm.
to overwinter and set seed for next year, and you'll have thousands and thousands and thousands of seeds. And the
Yes.
same with everything else. Spinach, I've got a video on how to collect spinach seed, and it's the same way. You just let one spinach plant, flower and seed, and you will have hundreds and hundreds of spinach seeds that you can then go on. So almost everything we're growing in our garden is a cool season plant. You can easily keep in the ground until it flowers, and then you've got more seeds and you know what to do with.
Yeah, and especially with the lettuces and greens and that sort of thing too, because that's good to do that each and every year. Get some new seed into the ground each and every year because, they kind of seed life for lettuce is pretty one of those ones that is kind of like pretty short. You only get
Yeah,
maybe a year or two out of them, and it's good to
exactly.
do that. And then too, like I'll just end with this. I had let a what is it, red Russian kale go to seed a few years ago, and I still have red Russian kale that pops up each and
Yeah,
every season
yeah.
still from one seed drop a few years ago too. So some of them will do that and all as well.
There's Mala. Mala's trying to say
Yeah, there
hello.
she is. All right. Yeah, I gotta let you go, Scott.
Okay.
All right, man. Excellent. So awesome again to have you here. Thank you so much for taking
It's
your
always
time.
good to be here, and I'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah. So yeah, again, remember to everybody that we got Gardner Scott with us here each and every second Sunday of the month to answer all of your garden questions, and it's been awesome to have you here today again, Scott. Thank you so much. We'll catch you
My
again later.
pleasure. Hope you all have
Go have
wonderful times in your garden.
yeah, and you go have fun in yours too. Thanks,
I
man.
will. Thanks, buddy.
You got it. All right. So there we go. Gardner Scott joining with us here today, answering all those great questions. Y'all brought some really good questions today. Thank you so much for that. Um, you know, it's such a pleasure to be able to have him here like I said, each and every month on the second Sunday to talk about all these things that are growing on, kind of, dig into some of these issues and these things that we've got questions about in the garden. And he's just such a wealth of knowledge about, just everything when it comes down to it. I really, really, think it's just really a blessing for us here on the show to be able to have him here to help us out in the garden each and every month. So awesome again to have him here. Awesome to have all of you here. So thank you so much. And let's see here. Oh, I got a couple more things real quick I want to talk about. 1 second. I do got to do this real quick. We'll be right back in one moment. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
All right. Yep. All right. So here we are again. Another great show here for our Sunday edition. Just really, again, awesome to have Scott with us here. Awesome to have all of you here. Thanks for all the great questions. I just want to also mention, too, it's been just a fun, great weekend for us here on the Urban Gardener channel, the Let's Get Growing show. If you didn't have a chance yesterday to check out yesterday's show, we do our show each and every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern here on the Urban Gardener channel. We have lots of great guests. Lots of great chat in our chat. So come and join with us each and every Saturday and Sunday. But yesterday, if you hadn't seen our show yesterday, was pretty much probably our biggest show we've done yet, where we had our featured guest was Mark Valencia from Self Sufficient Me, joined with us on the show live from Australia. And I'm telling you, it was great. I just, I was so nervous getting into doing that interview that day. And because I've been such a, big admirer of Mark's for so many years, and he's just got one of the, the biggest channels out there in the world. And he's just such a great personality, a great person. And just like I learned from almost every guest I get to interview here, that they are just as awesome in person and in conversation as they are on their channels. And so it was really great to meet Mark and get to talk with him and to, get to learn a little bit more about his garden story and, how he came to gardening, his time in the military, and all sorts of other things that we just got to learn about him that, you might not actually get to see on his channel, Self-Sufficient Me. So that's one of the great things about having these interviews and getting to meet folks like Mark here on the show is to really get to learn a little bit more about them, to get to know them just a little bit more through these fun conversations. And yesterday was just a blast with Mark Valencia. So I encourage you all to go and check out that show if you haven't already. And then we also got to meet Sean and Allison McManus from Spoken Garden in our Are You Following Me segment for our Saturday show. And they have some great content on their channel, Spoken Garden. They're also on Instagram. They do a podcast. They've written a great beginner's book, plus have invented a really cool kind of like seeding, dibbler type invention, which is really cool. I can't wait to get mine. I'll talk a little bit more about it as I get to try it and use it and all of that as well too. But yeah, really fun to talk with them and get to meet with them. There's just so many people doing so many things. It was a cool thing about their garden story was, you know, how they came together and they met, and then from there, their garden adventure just kind of really expanded, and together they've been able to create and build all of this really cool stuff around their Spoken Garden brand. And it was just really awesome to have them on the show too. And also, just to let you know too, let's talk about next Sunday's show, next Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show right here again at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The next Sunday edition is the third Sunday of the month, and each and every third Sunday of the month, I'm joined by my co-host and our good friend here on the Sunday show, Mark Boucher Colbert, who does our In the Garden segment. He's our co-host for our monthly gardening book club, and this month we are featuring Christy Wilhelmy. She's the author of the book Garden Variety. Garden Variety is a novel. This is just a great book, a great story. It's kind of a bit different than most of what we think about when we're thinking about gardening books. You know, this book centers around a community garden and a bunch of different people and these different characters. They have an issue with a neighbor of the community garden, that becomes a big part of the story, and then there's mixed in all of this gardening and garden tips and different things. So it's still got some garden tips and knowledge in there, but it's just a really great, fun novel and story for people who love gardening, love gardens. This is perfect for you. I encourage you to check out Garden Variety if you haven't yet, or if you haven't and you don't have it, definitely come and join with us next Sunday so that you can meet Christy Wilhelmy. We can talk all about the book and talk all about the story of Lizzie and her community garden, and talk about the future of this story and all of that as well too. And maybe be encouraged to get out and grab yourself a copy and read it and check it out yourself, because I think it's just a really awesome book. Makes for a really awesome read. And then next Saturday on the show too, we're going to be joined by Leo Carver. He is another author of the book Growing Consciousness. And I'm excited about talking to Leo. He's been doing some talks around on a few different garden festivals and expositions and things, and his book is about kind of like the garden and spirituality, and how how amazing the garden is for just kind of bringing this little extra bit of life to us and all of that too. And like his shirt says in that promo there, plants make people happy. And that's the truth. Plants make me happy. I know they make a lot of people happy out there. And it's going to be really great to talk with Leo about all of that too in his book. So come and join with us on next Saturday's show and next Sunday as we are live here on the Urban Gardener channel, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And check out all of these great, amazing guests that we have coming up on the show. Just awesome. And again, too, great to have all of you here too. Let's see here. I wanted to check and make sure. I saw somebody and a couple people coming in here a little bit late, but that's all right. Late's better than ever. It's really great to have all of you here with us for sure too. And let's see here. I know I saw something I wanted to mention. Maybe I must have missed it. I'm not sure here. I should have put it up. I should have highlighted it. Oh, let's see. Okay, well, I know there was a comment in there that was mentioning and talking about all the plants that we got here and was wondering whether or not we have any house plant content. And I don't necessarily have any house plant content as far as what we do in garden here on the channel and all of that. I do have all of my house plants. I don't make videos on them. Sometimes I maybe I should, but I am planning and thinking about doing a Let's Get Growing show, kind of themed. Maybe do a themed weekend or something like that, similar to what we did with the peppers earlier this season, and maybe have some house plant creators and video YouTubers and Instagrammers and all of that onto the show for a kind of maybe a fun house plant weekend. Let me know what you all think about that. And if you are kind of joining the show a little bit late right now, and if you're so inclined, definitely come back and watch the replay after we finish up here in a minute, and leave a comment down in the comment section there and let me know what you think of that idea, and because that's kind of what I like to encourage all of you here, especially at the end of the show, is to come back and check out the rest of the show if you missed it, and jump in and leave us some comments. And if you are here with us live right now, though, definitely hit the thumbs up, click the like button there. Also click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Definitely subscribe to the channel so you can keep following along with our fun garden adventure here on the Urban Gardener channel. We got some great new videos for you to check out on the channel as well too. So check out some of those new videos I got put out. We've got a new one coming out tomorrow as well too. So you can check out that premiere tomorrow morning. We'll have a new Urban Gardener Garden Journal video out. So do definitely check that out as well. Leave some comments as well too. There would be awesome. Some thumbs up as well. And then share our content, share the show, share some videos, all that sort of stuff. All of your support is so greatly appreciated. And I'm going to end with this, is because I just really want to say thank you all so much this weekend. This weekend was just really incredible. Again, as I mentioned, I got to, interview someone I've just really kind of, been a fan of, in a sense. I'm just going to say it, I'm a big fan of so many great gardeners, especially like we've got one of them right in our chat right now, Tony from Simplified Gardening, just somebody I've just enjoyed watching for so many years. And to be able to get people like Mark and Tony and James and all these other great guests that we have on our show, and to be able to have just such a fun show, a unique gardening show, a unique gardening experience here on YouTube, and to put this together, and to put together the effort, and to take the time to produce this show that I do, and to have all of you come here and support our show, to share our show out to your friends, to share out and to follow along, leave comments, to click the like button, to do all those reactions and support our show, to help us get seen by more people, is just really, really amazing. And I can't thank you enough, and again too, and again, Tony as well, because, I was really nervous about the interview yesterday, and Tony was like, don't be nervous, it's gonna be fine. But you know what, it was, and it was great. But it was really great because of everybody's support. Everybody just showed up like crazy yesterday, and was just so great, and made that experience 10 times better. And that's what's so awesome about having this show, is having all of you viewers, all of you who take your time to come here on Saturdays and Sundays to watch our show and take part in this fun gardening experience that we have here on the weekends. I thank you so much, and especially and a huge shout out to Jay Dixon, our moderator, who takes the time each and every show to get in there and drop links for all of us, and to help make this experience even more fun for all of us. I appreciate you all so much. This was just one of those weekends that's just a great example of why I enjoy doing this show so much. So with that, I'm going to leave all of you guys this weekend, and hope you all have a really, really great gardening week. And again, I hope to see you all next Saturday and next Sunday right here on the Urban Gardener channel, right here on the Let's Get Growing show. I'll see all of you on our next show.